Welcome to episode 159 of the Confidence Through Health podcast, featuring Peter Nielsen. He is a health and fitness coach, motivational speaker, TV host. He has Crohn's disease. He's a survivor of Crohn's disease since the age of 15. We talk about that story. We talk about autoimmune diseases. We talk about him taking the inspiration from that and funneling it into becoming Mr. Universe, Mr. International Universe, Mr. America titles, bodybuilding awards, and championships that he's won. We talk about all these things, and we talk about how you can overcome autoimmune diseases, how you can overcome any like roadblock or obstacle, anything that's in your way, how you can use nutrition and exercise and fitness to be able to help you get the motivation to get to where you want to be. And how it's so important to what you feed your body. And one of the things he says is you have to remember that for every purchase, there is a cost. And so while some of us are chasing maybe the wrong things, maybe what society tells us are important, but not really what we want, if we switch gears and go after the things that we want and purchase the things that are going to get us the things that we want, that's going to be more fulfilling. That's going to lead us to a life of purpose and passion. And we talk about that. We talk about how to do that. We talk about why it's important to do that. And I just found it's a fascinating, uplifting. I just love what Peter stands for. I think it's a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. And you'll be able to connect with him through the links in the show notes and find out more about what he's doing. But I think you're going to enjoy this conversation with Peter Nielsen. Well, thank you, Peter, for being on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
So there's a couple of things that I actually want to ask you about first. And so it's like, how do I, but like the first piece I think most people need to know is like, how did you get into fitness and health and wellness, and like, why is that important to you?
Yeah. There's no perfect person, and I was born with incurable condition called Crohn's disease. And for people that don't know, it's an autoimmune condition, and it just wants to take you out in the prime of your life. And for people that have no idea what it is, it's like having the stomach flu 24 hours a day, 365 for the rest of your life. So, it really tries to mentally mind screw you, where you may look like you're healthy, but on the inside, you have something that truly wants to take you out.
Yeah.
And eventually, your autoimmune system ends up running amok, and certain foods may seem like a foreign object, and your body will try to get it out one way or the other.
Yeah.
And then it builds ulceration, scar tissue. And that's how I literally have had 2 death experiences with the Crohn's.
Oh, man. So before we get too far into that, like, as far as the diagnosis piece, was that difficult to, like, how long did you have to go through before it was like, okay, this is what you have?
Great question. And a lot of people, even here, in 2023, a lot of patients, young people, older people, it masks in different ways, because Crohn's disease could affect you from the esophagus to the anus. Your offshoots could be bleeding in the eye. It could be rheumatoid arthritis. It could be just different things. So I started getting like low-grade fevers and the chills when I was like, say, 13. Okay. And we noticed that every kind of celebration, I was raised Italian and in Brooklyn, New York. So my grandmother from Naples, Italy would make me all of this amazing Italian food, but it had cheese in it. So not knowing I have a lactose intolerance to dairy products, I ended up going in the hospital because I was missing too much school. I went in the hospital day 1 at 135 pounds, and then 2.5 months later, after they finally diagnosed it, I came out at 86 pounds, 15 inches of my ileum, my small intestines taken out. They thought it was an exploratory surgery. They thought it was my appendix, and my appendix had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
That's when they realized we've come so far. I became the national spokesperson after winning the Mr. Universe in 1985.
Yeah.
And one of my missions before I take my last breath is that no one should suffer the way millions of people suffer around the world. And my hope from my mouth to God's ears is that we find a cure soon.
Yeah. Well, and that's pretty common with a lot of autoimmune issues, right? Is it like the symptoms show up as something that they go, okay, because you mentioned rheumatoid arthritis. It's like, oh, you have rheumatoid arthritis, but it might be something else that's manifesting as that, right? And so it's very confusing.
And that's what got me into nutrition, because I started to journal what I ate, and food is going to affect you negatively or positively.
Right.
60 to 70% on which how you look and how you feel has to do with what you put in this little circle called your mouth.
Right.
So I started seeing that when I was eating clean and different things, that it really was making me feel good. And, so then I ended up going to school for nutrition and exercise science. But on your question, I believe that we, unfortunately, are nutritionally illiterate in this country.
Oh, yeah.
I say that coming from a source of love, because we do not take nutrition requirements in high school, junior high, or in need for college unless you're going for that.
Right.
So we have people that, I believe in our culture, we're in a sick care system. We're not in the healthcare system yet.
Right.
We put Band-Aids and we medicate things with Dr. Kildare. And the next thing you know is you have 3 or 4 other offshoots of side effects from really powerful stuff that you're putting in there. So that's why what I always say is, a lot of times we take care of our cars or our clothes better than we do the one model year that God has given you. But all I know is that if you cross your T's, you dot your I's at the breakfast, lunch, and dinner table, you're grateful, you get up in the morning, and that's the fun part of your brain. Life can be amazing.
Yeah. So the journey into bodybuilding, because you mentioned the Mr. Universe, like the journey into that, was that okay, I've hit as low as I can possibly hit. Like, let's see how high we can go. Or was there something else that spurred that on?
Another great question. It's like when you feel like a pink polka dotted leprechaun and you feel like you're the only one that has Crohn's. The doctors put me on, I was laying in my bed. Doctor came in, my family was there and said, and he's talking as though that I'm not there.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Not even looking at me. He's looking at my parents. I'm crying. And he's saying, your son's got an incurable condition. We didn't even know how Crohn's disease was spelled, no less what it meant. And, then the last thing that he says is, he basically walks out of the room is, he says, your son has such severity that, for him to live, and I was at the age of 15, he goes, for him to live in his mid-20s, he says, would be a blessing. And then he walked out,
Wow.
It was pretty mind-boggling on that standpoint. But that's when my journey started to really learn. And, unfortunately, when people don't know something, they get fearful, and fear channeled wrong turns into a secondhand emotion. So when all this was going down, when I needed my parents the most, my dad ignited into this raging alcoholic every time that he drank. And I remember one of the last experiences was my dad had a telephone cord around my mom's neck in Brooklyn, New York, knocked the door down, just flaming drunk.
Yeah. And
my sister got out of the apartment to call the cops. And then I had to go against my father. And it was like, I loved my dad more than the oxygen I was breathing.
Right.
And I didn't understand why this was happening. So I got him off. Danish man, stood 6'3", 210 pounds, built like a rock.
Yeah.
And I tried to get out, and I got caught up on the drawers. He broke my collarbone in 3 places, gave me stitches over my eye, and just knocked me out unconsciously. And I woke up in the hospital, and that was the part of my faith journey, because the enemy gets in your ear.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought it was my fault. I thought that if I wasn't born with this incurable condition, that my parents wouldn't be arguing. If I, wasn't home sick, my dad wouldn't be drinking. So the next day I went literally to the Verrazano Bridge in Brooklyn, New York, and I thought I was going to just make it easy for everyone. And I saw the blood as I took a razor blade, dripping down to the grass. It was January 17th, 1977. And then I felt too cowardly, but I heard a voice to a God I didn't even believe in say, give me one more day, give me one more chance. And that's when I started soul searching. And, I believe with all my heart, looking back decades later, nothing is wasted in God's economy.
Right.
No disease, no tear, no hurt, no loss. And when people ask me what I do now, I was in a hopeless situation in a childhood, being sick, being in an abusive environment. And now when people ask me, it says, I'm in the hope business. Man, I love
all. So that spurred you into like, what am I going to do? How am I going to correct my life? How am I going to get into in fitness was something that just messed with you?
Yeah. So I started training. I saw a magazine. Arnold Schwarzenegger was on the cover of Muscle and Fitness. I was at my cousin's house in Long Island, New York, and I just was mystified on how someone could just, look healthy and have all these muscles and stuff. So I started again journaling stuff. And then I asked my parents for a 110-pound workout set. So I literally took that and went down the basement in this 6-family, 4-story apartment building in Brooklyn, New York. There was clothes that were hanging up, people's underwear, garbage pails there. And I was just focused that I knew there was more than how I was living. Health-wise, spiritually, family, I wanted out.
Yeah.
And I believe with all my heart that when God puts a dream in someone's heart, that it's going to come to fruition, but it may take days, decades, but there always is a due date.
Right.
And many of us will let go of our health, our relationships, our dreams when we give up too early.
Right. Well, and that's something that I think that's super common in the diet world, right?
Yes.
Like, I'm going to try this because it works in 30 days, or I'm going to try this because it's a 6-month program, and then it's like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. But if you learn how to eat right, then like you do it the rest of your life. It's not just a time frame thing.
What you just said is like drop mic, because I've owned health clubs for 28 consecutive years throughout the country, physical therapy businesses. If everyone listened to what I had to say, or my macronutrient meal plan, or my supersetting program, or cross training, I would be poor. Because everybody would be Mr. or Mrs. Universe, and it was like phenomenal. But we basically get in shape to get out of shape.
Right.
We medicate ourselves with food. Like you said, we're always looking for a quick fix. I dislike immensely the word diet because the first 3 letters spell die. And it's like, you don't want to deprive yourself. Your body's so beautifully chemically balanced that you think you're faking it out, but if you're not having enough protein, the building block of muscle, you're going into a catabolic standpoint.
Right.
You're atrophying, you're losing your basal metabolic rate. So bodybuilding wasn't I went into my first show, the disease went in remission, started working out, started seeing, these bumps, muscles, recognition. And I came in dead last in my first bodybuilding season. True story.
Yeah.
And my second was 5th place. It was my first trophy.
Okay.
My dad drove me like 7 hours through Pennsylvania. I ended up burying that trophy with my dad, and I made a promise to God and to myself that I will never not give it 1,000,000%.
Right.
Meaning I will never, ever stop or be tempted, when I'm training. And, I say this with humility, but I have, since that 5th place, I never not won in kicking.
Yeah.
And it's been an amazing ride. Bodybuilding, nutrition, the lifestyle has really given me a life where it's like a slice of heaven on earth. Because there's nothing better when you're passionate about something. It's almost like the disease being in remission it's almost like, and I hope I'm talking to somebody out there. It's like whether you're diagnosed with cancer, prostate cancer, you're going through a divorce, foreclosing on your home, it's very, very temporary. But what I always say is, what you put in your brain and what you speak is going to prophesize good or bad tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
So you really need to be mindful on what comes out of your mouth and also your thought process, because what we focus on this morning is how we live this afternoon.
Right.
So it's been just a beautiful ride, but you need to almost manifest and champion your own life. No one's going to train for you. No one's going to eat for you.
Right.
So, when I started winning the bodybuilding competitions, like I said before, I did it because I just wanted to feel normal. But then when I started winning, I was like, wow, not only could I fit in, but maybe I could be the best at this.
Right.
Because with bodybuilding, it's not about looking at that watch that maybe is better than someone else, or driving up in a more fancy car, or
Right.
having a salary that's more than your friend. No, this is comparing your physique, your God-given body.
Yeah.
So you never feel more emotionally, spiritually, physically naked, because they're judging how God made you. And you have this ability to eat right, to dial it in nutritionally, to be symmetrical, and then
Right.
to put a bow on it with a posing exhibition that people, regardless if they like bodybuilding or not, are going to say, wow, that's pleasing to the eye.
Right.
Maybe that's something that I want to look like, or want to do. So it's been a wonderful ride. And in that, build this nucleus confidence. Well, if I could be the best and be a champion in the world in bodybuilding, then I could be the best husband, or I could be the best
Right.
father, or I could be the best CEO, So it's been a wonderful, wonderful ride. There's not too many people that I know that received a calling in their life. Usually it's from a disaster.
Yeah.
And you could either be that victor or victim and be paralyzed in that moment, reread, rewrite that same chapter of your life as that character for the rest of your life.
Right.
And, and I have a sister who's the complete opposite and was through that same abuse, but she's why me, life sucks.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And it's very, very difficult. And, my prayer is that she realizes that she is more than worthy to reach her destiny, that whatever that may be.
Yep. Well, yeah, and like you said, the words that we talk to ourselves with are very important to what, not just what comes out, but what we in turn believe.
Yes.
And I work with a lot of athletes in track. I ran track in college, and so I help a lot of kids get to college. High school kids that they can get college scholarships or whatever. And so, like, I've got one girl that I coached not too long ago, one of her workouts, and I was like, what's going on? Oh, my head. I just keep telling myself it. I'm like, okay, you just finished that rep. Put it to bed. Like, it's gone. It just because it didn't go the way you wanted to on that 400-meter lap doesn't mean it has to affect the next 6.
Correct.
Like, just like, and I'm sure that's the same way with bodybuilding. Like, I do a set and it's like, oh, that didn't feel right. I didn't, like, that can ruin the rest of your day.
It's really you against you.
Yeah.
It starts and it ends with you. And I was doing chess the other day, and I have in my home, I sold all the health clubs around 5 years ago, because I got into a wellness company in Texas and Houston. Yeah. And so I was downstairs and I'm on my Cybex Smith machine. Yeah. And I'm coming up, I put on some heavy weight, and I was wanting to do 10 reps. I got to 8, and I had to put it down.
Yeah.
And what it did was it drove me to a place of taking no prisoners, because I knew I wasn't focused. I knew I was looking at my text messages 30 seconds ago on the bench, and I wasn't there. I wasn't there. I missed it. Yep. Well, what I ended up doing is I ended up having my best chest day in my heaviest weight, because I just wanted to kick its butt.
Right.
Afterwards, where what you just said is so true. So many people then say, I screwed up at this restaurant. We went out with a bunch of couples. It's Wednesday. I'll start next Monday again. No, man, start tomorrow morning. Like,
right.
You're forgiving on yourself. I mean, we're humans.
Yeah.
So it's so important. Mindset. I think the most valuable thing, the most important thing we could ever change is our mind, because everything that we really truly need is right in front of us. But you said it best. When you believe something, whatever that is, good or bad, you embody it. Right. And when you embody it, you become it.
Yep.
So, so if you think you're a champion, if you think that you're in good shape, if you think your confidence to go into that, that job interview, there's a good chance that person's going to see your light and your energy and your positivity, and it's just going to come out of your paws.
Right.
I could walk into a room and I could see someone, they could be the most beautiful specimen of a human, but I could feel darkness. I could feel closed. I could feel hurt. I could feel stuff like that. So it's crazy, but we have the ability to really navigate through right, wrong, good decisions, great decisions, bad decisions. Right. But we have this little thing called free will.
Yep.
Flesh.
Right.
Ego. Pride.
Yep.
And it usually takes us in the weeds a lot of times.
Oh, yeah. Well, in a big piece of that is what you're feeding yourself, right? Nutritionally. Right. Because if your cells aren't working properly, because they're not getting the right nutrients, they're not getting nutrients at the right timing, right? Because there's a timing piece to it too. It's not just like, and I'm not talking about intermittent fasting versus like 3 meals a day or anything, but it's like, if you're not giving your cells what they need on a regular basis, then how are they going to work optimally? And of course, when you start telling yourself something or something goes off, like you're going to go down the road that's just
spiral.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. I haven't had red meat for 35 years. I haven't had dairy products for about 42 years. And people are like, what do you eat? Rabbit food?
Right.
No, I eat very clean, and you are what you eat. And especially, like we began this conversation about, the Crohn's disease, but it's keep an honest person honest with me, because if you play, you pay. There's nights that we go out with a bunch of couples and everybody's home, and 1 o'clock in the morning, everybody's sleeping. And I'm, if I eat wrong, I'll be in the bathroom until 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So here, I know I live it. I've schooled it. I teach it. But we do make mistakes. But what it does for me is that when the Crohn's shows its head, it's like unplugging my battery.
Right.
I just feel lethargic. I feel achy. I just feel like I just want to just sleep. I have pain. And my point is that I don't wish any uncurable condition on anyone.
Yeah.
But what you should understand is that if you are diligent at the breakfast, lunch, and dinner table, if you do look at your macros, it takes 3,500 calories to lose or gain 1 fat pound. And people are just helter-skelter and stuff where they're just like, well, I don't know why I'm not losing weight. Well, if you consume more than you expend, you're going to wear it.
Right.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
So if people put a little more effort, like I said before, we spend more time in school talking about geography and mathematics, which a lot of forms of we never use unless we're an architect or an engineer or something, and then social studies and science more so than we do nutrition.
Yeah. And
I believe that in the years to come, it's going to, God willing, change around. I had a school program where I would hit, for 20 years, I hit 20 schools, elementary schools every season. Yeah. And it was endorsed by 3 Michigan governors. And I remember going in there and they had pop machines in the
Oh
hallway.
yeah. Yeah.
And now, so it is starting to change, but we got
Right.
a long way to go.
We do. And there's the whether it's the pharmaceutical or the food industry, they've got, a lot of money, and they got big hands that are grabbing onto whatever they can hold on to. And so it is a tough fight, I think. But one of the things that I think you mentioned, well, I mean several, but it's just the focus, and like focusing on what you want. A lot of times that mindset piece, and like I know that you might want your taste buds tell you want the dopamine hit from the cake dessert or the donuts in the morning, that are in the office. But like you have to focus and go, but what I really want is what's beyond that. What's my life going to be able to do? What's my purpose? What's my passion? What am I going to be able to do with my body if I'm trying to lose weight when I get to that point, or if I'm just trying to maintain a healthy body? If I start eating, I mean, it's very well known that if you eat processed foods, the high sugar, high flour stuff, you're going to die earlier than you would if you didn't eat that stuff.
Right.
Like what's the potential what's the gap that you could achieve with your life if you stuck around those many years?
And I think that on that note, a lot of people, they live for today.
Yeah.
They live for today. And it's like, my faith is the core of who I am. So it's like, my point in that is that, if I had a mindset and my belief system was different, man, I just run amok. I wouldn't even be married. I would be just like, woo.
Yeah.
So you take that thought process to nutrition or to your body's going to eventually break down. When we're born, our cells start dying very quickly. Right. And, we start losing and limiting our testosterone. And I could go on and on and on. And our, creatine and everything starts going down from 20 years on and on. So even our ability we lose muscle a half a percentage point every single year from 30 years old and on. We have the opportunity to turn the hands of time back, to have more quality in our life. Biblically, it says we should live to 120. Right. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to speak that. And I want quality in my life. I want to be able to be active with my wife. I want to do my boating, my tennis, my working out, my playing with my grandkids. I want quality in my life, and it's not going to just come and sit on my lap. We all have access to it. And I guess my question to your listeners, how bad do you want it? Because talk is cheap. If you really want it, you're going to invest in your own health. Because if you're the CEO of your own body, not only does yourself win, your family wins, your company wins, your wife wins, your friends win. It's just a win-win. But a lot of times, unfortunately, because of addiction and strongholds and different things or generational stuff, people get caught in that. And I know this may sound, for some people that are going through it, but it's selfish to just think of self. Right. Whether it's drinking or medicating yourself with food at night, if your husband or your significant other is really working to lose 100 pounds or 40 pounds, there's nothing better than to do it together. Unity is amazing. It creates love and light and hope and peace and joy. And if someone basically is in denial to that, and you are living in the same house, even with your kids, and your kids are having Cocoa Pebbles, and you're trying, it's like we need to practice what we preach. We need to truly, even with our children watch us like TVs.
Oh, yeah.
They don't care about what we say. They care about how we live our lives. Yep. So it's just a beautiful thing that when you do take care of yourself and God blesses you with your health, then you can be a blessing to other people. And that's what rocks my world, because I have literally, hundreds of thousands of people that have connected with me all over the world, where I have had to have things interpreted from different countries. How, Peter, have you won XYZ with having a debilitated, incurable condition called Crohn's? Right. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. There's
Right.
access to it. But like you said, you got to believe, number one, you got to have a vision. Number two, you got to speak life into yourself. And then guess what? You got to get off of your butt and you got
Right. Yeah, well, it's very true. And one of the things that I've mentioned this before on my podcast is that like back in 2016, now it wasn't as serious as what you went through, but I got laid off from a job, but I was starting to get myself back into shape. I was like, I had this passion to start a business, fitness and wellness and all this back right when I got out of school with my degree in exercise physiology, but the internet was just starting. And I was like, I think this is a great idea. Do it on the internet. Da, da, da. I had so many people say, the internet's a fad. It's not going to work. Don't do that. Go get a regular job. Da, da, da. Like, you're never going to make any money. And I'm like, So I let it sit for 20 years, came back to it in 2016. Right at the same time I got laid off from a job. And so I knew it was like God saying, no, I gave you this. You're just sort of dabbling. I need you to go all in. And that's where I came up with the name for my business, All In. Like you got to go all in. 2 months later, I was water skiing and tried to do a trick that I'd wanted to do all my life and fell, and the ski didn't come off my knee or my leg. And so my knee took the brunt of it, ruptured my PCL completely. There's a sliver of the MCL that's still there. A lot of other minor damage. No need for knee surgery. I went back to my doctor from college and was like, he was my second opinion. And I was like, look, athletics, people, me from 20 years ago, but like, do I need to have surgery? What? He goes, does it hurt when you run? I said, no. He goes, then just be smart. And 5 months to the day that I had that injury, I ran a half marathon and people thought it was nuts.
Yeah,
but I was like, before the injury, God told me you're going to run this race. And I was like, okay, I'm going to run this race. And got injured. And I was like, how the hell am I going to run this race? Because I got one doctor telling me not to run until after the race date completely. But I prepared myself as best I could. I think I had, in that 5 months, I started running like 2 months before the race is when I finally was able to run. And my longest run before that half marathon was 10 miles. And that almost killed me.
Unreal.
But I made it to, at like mile 8, 9, I was dying. I had my brace on my knee, but like physically I was out, right? Like I knew I wasn't prepared for it. And so people are just flying by me left and right. Well, this one guy goes by and he had a very distinctive hat on. He took his hat off and he said, my hat's off to you, man. Come on, we got a mile to go. Let's go. Let's finish. And then he took off and kept going. Well, I finished the race. He came over because, he could tell who I was. Obviously, I got a big brace on my knee and everything. He came over and he goes, I have to ask you, why in the world would you run this race? And I was able to say, well, God told me to. And he was like, what? And so we had a conversation right there. And like that, to me, that like what you're talking about, God's purpose for all this. And like, I think if we start eating better and opening up those passages to what our body can actually do, it clears our mind from junk, from all the chemicals and everything. And then we can really see our purpose and passion and how we can benefit others.
I mean, you couldn't be truer words, and what a beautiful testimony. What I would say to anyone that has a physical challenge or anyone that's dealing with inflammatory bowel disease, arthritis, lupus, is that inflammation kills. And
right.
I live on an anti-inflammatory eating regimen. So, I mean, it's like, and people will say, well, what is that? Well, when we're cooking, and my wife is not a good cook, she's like a chef. It's crazy, man. And, but turmeric and rosemary and ginger and triple virgin olive oil and, omega-3 essential fatty acids, green tea extract, all of these things bring inflammation down. Even good fats such as avocado. I could go on and on and on. A good example, you could have a 4 or 5 ounce piece of artery clogging, heart attack on a plate beef that's an irritant that will create inflammation, or you could have 4 or 5 ounces of salmon that basically has omega-3 essential fatty acids and 6, and it will literally help your heart, help your skin, help your hair. Oh, and by the way, bring your inflammation down.
Yeah.
So it's like knowledge is power.
Right.
And so many of us, like I said before, it's not even our fault that we're nutritionally illiterate, but let's take charge of what we put in our body, man. Let's take charge of how we take care of our body, because I don't think half of us realize on how damn good our bodies could feel that.
Oh, yeah.
So good. Sometimes I feel like I need a license to walk outside. And I'm grateful because I know what it is. I mean, in 2001, March 7th at 2:14 in the morning, my heart stopped. I had my second death experience right in front of my two kids. I came back from San Francisco on a book tour. I'm an author of 5 books.
Yeah.
Book was doing great, centerfold of Men's Health. Come back, and all of a sudden I get a pain. Denial is a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a kidney stone, never had a kidney stone. And after 20 years of the disease being in remission, it came back wanting to kill me. And a hole perforated in my ileum. I was going into septic shock after taking my 2 daughters out to a restaurant. They looked at me with fear. They never saw me sick. And I was embarrassed. And I told their mother at the time to just move them out of the room.
Yeah.
When you're dying, you know you're dying. Life is being sucked out of you like you've never felt before. And the last words that I heard at William Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak, Michigan was screaming, "We're losing him." 8-hour surgery, defibrillators to get me going again 5 different times. Was in an induced coma for 4 days because I went into septic shock. Now I'm going to tell you something. I woke up with a softer heart. I know that God has kept me here for a reason. We all have a purpose. We're all one of a kind with talents.
Right.
And I'm on fire to finish strong, you know. Yeah. And you can't live a purpose-filled life unhealthy, period.
No, yeah. Yeah, you can't. Well, and you mentioned eating clean, and that's more than just like making sure your food is clean when you bring it home to the store, right? Like washing it off or whatever. That's like, you have to know what's in your food, right? Like there's things that you have to like look at.
Yes. I mean, I just, you know, from the organic aspect of fruits and vegetables to, you know, grass-fed stuff, or, you know, to the fish that I eat, the deeper, the colder the water, the redder, you know, with salmon. I mean, I'm really meticulous on what we're eating. And then also because now almost 3 feet of my ileum is taken out, right. I have to be very careful because that's where you absorb your nutrients.
Right.
So I use supplementation, started a company called Zervita in Houston, Texas, and helped formulate a transformation system with clean protein powders and a beautiful energy drink that has all anti-inflammatory properties. It's like an all-in-one with guarana, which is a distant cousin of caffeine. It's in an oil base, so it doesn't mess with your blood sugar levels. I have a digestive product called the Cleanse. So I'm loving it because now all of a sudden, you know, to be able to help people get on their right macronutrient meal plans, to get them kickstarted. But like what you said, I want people to continue. And I'll give you this for everyone that's out there that goes on these yo-yo plans. You know, they're hot for 3 months and then they go on a challenge for 90 days and then they fall off of a cliff.
Right.
What I say to my kids or anyone that will listen to me is if you want something so bad, you got to be laser focused, but most importantly, consistent. But if you want to keep it, you need to be persistent. Anybody can save up and buy a house, but it's another thing to maintain it.
Right.
Anybody could romance the love of their life, put a ring on their finger, and then all of a sudden they drop off of the face of the earth because they're not pursuing or trying to win that person's heart or choosing that person with love, which is an action word every day. So again, if you want something, you need to be you need to be consistent. And if you want to keep it, you need to be persistent.
Yep. Well, and that's a lot of people, it's when you're talking about the yo-yo, it's one of the things that bugs me is, January 1st comes around and you see everybody start posting about, hey, I'm doing this. You want to join me? You want to join me in this. And not to single any single one of them out, because I think there's a lot of them that have issues. But I've got multiple friends that have done the 75 hard, right? And so they're posting their, every day, da, da, da. And I'm like, okay, let me look at this thing. And I'll look at it and I'm like, that's my life.
Every day.
I'm like, 365 times how many years I've been doing this, right? It sounds like you're the same. Like, it's like, right. That's what it shouldn't be hard.
No.
That should be life. And if you're doing life that way, you get so much more out of it. And so it doesn't seem hard.
In every category.
Yeah.
In every category, because, like I said before, if you're healthy, and what I always say is I love the word transformation, because you look up the word transformation in the dictionary, it says making a radical change in some area of your life. So I believe with all my heart that a transformation should be made, mind, body, and spirit, but the last one should be first. Yeah. There's no way, whether I'm talking on stage at a convention center, or I'm talking on my TV show, or just talking to a group of people in my living room, is that I can work you out until you're blue in the face. I can tell you what to eat, but if you don't become spiritually fit, if you don't truly have the core and the belief system that you can heal, you can reconcile, you can break this food addiction, you can lose 80 pounds, you can champion your life. If you don't have that, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing you can do for anyone that we meet. So I always kid around and say to my partners, or to say to the people before I get on stage, is that before I could give an application to anything, whether it's to lose weight, increase your VO2 max, whatever it is, I need to do heart surgery. I need to soften their hearts so that they hear the message, and the message has influence that's going to help change the course of their life. If it's not going to create a why syndrome in their mind, that why needs to be so greater than any fear, any defeat. That's what gets people up in the morning, is the why.
Right.
And that's why I love what I do, because it's not about me, it's about we. But the beautiful thing is that everything that I've been through, all the heartaches, all the detours, the bumps, the near-death experiences, the divorce, all this stuff, I believe with all my heart is part of the story, part of the testimony.
Yeah.
That what I want to do is pay it forward. A lot of people don't like to talk about their lowlights, but when you talk about your lowlights, you're really giving gratitude for where you are now, because you're acknowledging that that's a reference point. That's not who you are, or it's what you went through. But to be able to give that story to someone else that maybe is about to give up, that maybe is going through the same thing, that's crazy good. Because all it's going to do is, do you know how many people through your podcast or through my television show or whatever, that we could possibly touch someone's life where we may never, ever, ever meet them in our entire life, but yet what you've been through, what I've been through, what other people have been through, if we could help each other, I believe with all my heart, God has made us relational. We can't do it by ourselves.
No, very true. Yeah, very true. And that's the whole reason, I've written 2 books and I've spent more money than I've made on them. And, and so my wife, I'm writing another one and she's like, really? Like what, do you understand how this works? Like economically? I'm like, yes, I do. But somebody bought it and somebody got something from it.
Yes.
Like, it's not about me making money off of it. It's about this information needs to get out because God's given it to me. Like the first book I wrote in 14 days because God just said, here, write this. Wow. And I was like, wow. And that was really that was when I solidified, because one of the things that I always questioned, it was like, okay, how did these prophets write? Like, I don't get that. Like, I don't get that inspiration. I don't understand that. And then that happened to me and I was like, oh, I totally get it. Like, I totally get it now.
That's the
Um,
Holy Spirit coming over you, man. And
yeah,
it's funny when people say, how do you talk on stage the way you do? It's like, I just pray before I get on. I have bulletin points, and then I allow God to show up.
right, right.
Because if I get in my own head,
Yep,
I'm going to go into the weeds.
yep. Well, and that's the same way I do with my podcast. Is like I have a, like I told you before we started, is like I've got a couple of questions, but
Yeah.
I want God to lead it in the direction that He wants people to hear it, and that's what's important. Um, but you mentioned like food addictions and things that like people are dealing with, and I know that plays a big part in like, okay, this person tried this diet, I'm going to try it with them. It doesn't work for me, it worked for them. And whether it's the addiction piece that's drawing me down, that's keeping me from it working, or the belief system of I'm addicted to this, I can't get rid of it. Right? Those are all big things that people have to overcome.
Oh my golly. And being in the personal training business, like I've had 12 clubs, 12 physical therapy businesses, and the most successful 2 units, believe it or not, were not the 50,000 square foot clubs. They were the 2,400 square foot clubs that had 17 exercise physiologists, some massage therapists, nutritional counseling, because it was just one-on-one, and people were absorbing all of that. So
Oh, right.
it's so very, very important. Like I said, knowledge is power, and to put together a blueprint that's specifically for you, because everyone's different. One person's treasure is another person's rubbish.
Right.
And you can't shotgun something. You really need to focus on where that person is on their journey, what they want to accomplish. The worst thing that an exercise physiologist can do is, in my opinion, someone comes in for a consultation, I always say, bring a picture of what you want to emulate. And I'm going to tell you if that picture is attainable according to your bone structure, your height, metabolism. Right. But the point is that you need to visualize and it needs to be something that is attainable.
Right.
A lot of times trainers will end up trying to have someone be something they don't want to be.
Right.
And then it turns them off to fitness completely.
Yep.
It could be CrossFit. It could be supersetting. The person's like, I hate training. I'm never going to do it again.
Right.
And I just think that, as we were talking a moment ago on the mental toughness and the mind shift, I think that a good exercise physiologist or a good trainer needs to be almost a psychologist and really get into that person's mind about the addiction. I mean, my dad lost his life at 49 years young from alcohol.
Right.
So no one wants to be 350 pounds by eating and have an addiction. No one wants to, be doing cocaine every day. I know business people that literally travel to the inner cities of LA or Detroit, to pick up little bags of heroin. And these guys are successful, but they're medicating themselves. So whether it's a drug or medicine or sex, if something is going to control you, you have a problem, period.
Right.
And I work with a lot of people like that. And I did something in a renowned place in Arizona, and I can't say it, but there were people that you would see on TV. There were people that are in rock bands that are a household name. And these people have their own planes, but they have an addiction.
Right.
And they recognize it. And all I can say is that it's possible to truly live a quality-filled life, but you can't do it alone. Because what I believe is that addiction basically will take you down a road where it will isolate you. And isolation creates destruction. It just creates darkness.
Right.
And if you say that you have a problem, you ask for help, it creates unity, it creates light, it creates reconciliation, it creates healing. So if anybody out there is going through something like that, it's real, it's common. Your next door neighbor, there's so many people that are dealing with some kind of an addiction, even if it's just being on social media.
Right.
People are hung up to that, but don't allow that to waste your life away. Don't allow that to take you off course to really what God has, intended you to do.
Yeah.
Because I believe we all have talents and we all have callings in our life, whatever that may be. But when you get into what I call that sweet spot where you know without a question on why you're here and it rocks your world and you're looking to truly be a blessing to other people and that's part of your calling,
Yeah.
it doesn't get better than that.
Right. And like you said, it everybody's dealing with something.
Yeah.
Right. And so like it may not be the same thing, whether, somebody may be drugs and the other person could be pornography or what,
Right.
but like the drive and the instinct and the urges and the triggers, like they're all the same. And, we can all support each other. And like, obviously if somebody's got a much stronger addiction, they're going to need a different level of support and help. But like you said, with your neighbors or your coworkers or whatever, it's like, if you can get to that vulnerable spot, and my pastor asked me, I'm going to be speaking next month at our men's breakfast because he was like, you're so open with your story.
Yep.
And I was like, well, yeah, I have to be, because like, if not, like, who's going to want to listen to me? Who's going to want to believe me that like, and he's like, can you come talk? Because we've got so many men that don't know how to be vulnerable with like, okay, this is where I really am, because whether it's they're putting on a mask or whether they're leaning on their success in their career or whatever, like, there's so many people that are dealing with stuff. And if we can break through and I think nutrition is a big piece of that, because if we eat healthy, we automatically we crave that connection. We crave that. And then when you're sitting next to somebody, it's like, what are you going to talk about? You got to talk about something.
Right. And do you know what you're saying? It's like I've literally done seminars on where when you're eating, it affects not only your blood sugar levels, but it affects your serotonin, as you mentioned, your dopamine, your L-tryptophan. All of this stuff, this feel good, this mellow stuff. And all of a sudden, if you're like, a lot of people will do this, especially during this time of the year, there's less sunlight and there's more parties. It's colder outside and people will reach for alcohol, and alcohol may make you feel good for about 7 minutes. And then after that, it literally is just going to suck you dry. Yeah. And it is a depressant. And it's just usually in our studies is that if you have one addiction, it usually follows with two addictions.
Right.
So, and it's just that way. It could be, smoking and cocaine. It could be drinking and whatever. Yep. Yep. And all I know is that there is a way out. You don't need to hit rock bottom. I lost a dad from an addiction. He probably could have lived an amazing, healthy life, but he didn't feel worthy. It was generational. His father was an alcoholic. His father was an alcoholic. Yeah. And he was stuck. And a lot of times, if you show me a man or a woman who's stuck, it's because they don't have a game plan for their future. You show me a person that's got a plan or sees their future, they're not stuck.
Yeah.
They'll do anything to get out, including asking for help.
Right. Well, and that goes to so many things. Is it like there's, with food, a lot of people just say it's in my genes because my family's all been fat or overweight. And like, so I'm stuck. And it's like, it's when you look at the science of it, that's not the truth.
Agreed.
And now you may be susceptible to it, but you can overcome it. Just like alcoholism, you're susceptible to it if you've got a big family tree of it, but you don't have to go down that road.
Agreed.
And the other piece I think is that and I forget the statistic, but when you look at CEOs of top like Fortune 500 companies, they're the anomaly. When you look at our country is 70% of people are overweight or obese, but when you look at CEOs, it's like the opposite of that, because I think, like you said, they've got a plan, they know what they're doing, they've got a purpose, they're driven, and they understand that if I exercise and I eat right, I'm going to perform better productivity wise, and so why wouldn't I do it?
Right. And you're going to go to bed early too. I mean, it's like when I was doing the Today Show for 15 years, I was going to bed at 3. I was getting up at 3:30. I was going to bed at 9 o'clock at night. I had to be down at the studios at 5:30. So yeah, you can't do that partying at night
Yeah.
Can't do that. For every purchase in life, there's a cost.
Right.
And I think, that's why young people, if some young people are listening, what you need to know is that time waits for nobody. And a lot of times you don't realize on how much time is passing you by. And then a lot of times people will ask me, like, why am I not married? Or why haven't I found this person? Or why don't I have savings? Or why don't I have the job I have? I believe that a lot of people have self-inflicted that on themselves because they haven't prioritized.
Right.
And like, well, I'm young, but I know a lot of people who said they were young, women and men in their, in their mid 40s, and they're still not married, and they're
Right.
still hanging out, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. We've been talking for an hour now, and it's been great. I really appreciate it. Doesn't feel like it's been that long. So how can people get a hold of you? How can they follow you? How can they get into the things that you're doing? And if this has struck a chord and they're like, I've got to talk to this guy. Like, how can they follow up with you?
Well, thank you. And it's been a pleasure. I mean, I really want God to continue to use you in a mighty way.
Thank you.
You got a beautiful heart and a beautiful soul, and you're giving a lot of great informative advice. If anybody wants to reach me, they could reach me on social media at Peter. My middle initial is N for Nicholas. So it's Peter N. Nielsen, Nielsen. Or you could go to peternielsen.com. And I'm just starting a new program called Transform with Peter. So it's transformwithpeter.com. And I basically take people through about 12 different pods of nutrition and just sleep and exercise and stress. So I'm really excited to launch that in about a week.
Awesome. That'll be awesome. Well, I'll put all those links in the show notes so people can just click right on them and get in touch with you and find out more information. It's been a pleasure. I so greatly appreciate you being on.
And I want to have you on my podcast. And,
I'd love it.
And I have my TV show on Discovery, and it's syndicated in about 78 markets on NBC. So nice. I love what I do. I can tell you love what you do. And if there's anything that I can do to help you, man, I'm here. God bless you and your family, all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much.